your first period is always memorable, I guess, but for me it was more confusing.
When I first got my period, I didn't tell anybody. I felt shameful, scared, confused. I was unfamiliar with the concept of periods at all. I had no idea how to use any period products. I had to ask friends who learned because they had their period before me or look up tutorials.
It happened at a very inconvenient time because I was at my dad's house. I had to go use the restroom, and then I looked down, I'm like, oh crap, I just got my period, right? I remember I called out for my dad and I was like, I just got my period. And he didn't know what to do. He was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the drugstore and get you pads. Now, I have never seen a pad. I guess I was never taught, you know. He went to the drugstore and then he came back and he gave me this packet. And it wasn't like a regular pad. It was like a very, very thin lining, and my dad didn't know. He just kind of thought that it was pad, so he bought it for me. And I remember I was there for like a week, so basically on my period, and I would leak all the time because this thing was so thin.
So I got my first period when I was 12, and I was prepared for it because my mom was worried about it. I was aware of what it was, what it comes with it, like side effects of cramps and mood swings and, you know, just hormone change, as, you know, the body does.
But when I went back home, my mom told me how this isn't a pad, and she showed me an actual period pad and how it works, and I was like,
but I wasn't prepared for what it was like to have one and be unprepared for it. So times where I went to school and I didn't have a pad or something I could use for school, like while I was in there, it was a little alarming because it's like, okay, so where do you go to? Who do you go to? And why did I forget my stuff? Like, you know. But I remember going up to people, asking them like, hey, do you have something I could use? And sometimes people wouldn't be prepared because they weren't on theirs. And then you have those other people who had like painting liners, but it wasn't useful because I needed a pad. So then I would go to the nurse, I would ask her for a pad. But the only thing about it, even though she did prepare me with one, which I was grateful for, I wasn't a fan of the texture of it. Not really the texture, but the size. The size of it, it was thick. You could see it through your underwear, through your pants possibly. It was thick. It had no wings. Wings are very helpful, especially for somebody with a more heavier period.
The stigma and shame I felt towards myself when I was too young to form words for my gender identity was even heavier. I often felt deeply uncomfortable towards myself during the month when I was menstruating, with no explanation why. It became harder and harder when I got older. Even when I came into my identity and had words to describe myself, I still had my period every month. I still had my period even 2 years into my medical transition. The feeling of having to go into the women's room as a passing trans man because I needed to change a pad was horrible. I felt anxious during my days at college, trying to be conscious of changing it as close to leaving class. I would try to hide the noise of opening period products in the women's room even, or when I would use the men's room. I have bled through my clothes because teachers in both high school and college did not let me use the restroom. I never faced anyone saying a word about me being in the women's bathroom, but it still made me feel low when I asserted myself and my pronouns and corrected my teachers and classmates in my name being used just to be seen by my professor to go into a women's room. I felt like I was invalidating myself.
So with me using the school's pads, I really did not like it because it was very kind of low quality. And when using it, I would have troubles like the pad moving side to side in my panties, so blood might get on my panties, or I would have to adjust it. Sometimes I even had to wing it and, put tissue paper on top or on the sides, or, recreate the pad that I usually use. But, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do and make it work.
When I go buy pads, I'm like I see different prices, and I always try to go for the cheaper one, but that always doesn't really work that well. But I just don't understand why pricing of pads matter, just because of their comfortability. And it's just, marketing is kind of stupid, because that's a necessity for your body. You have to have that. And for people who struggle with money, or homeless people, they can't just put on toilet paper all the time, because that's not really good. It doesn't sustain for a longer time.
I have had all of my education, grades 1 through 12, in Catholic high schools. It was difficult growing up with education around periods, because there was absolutely no sex ed in these classes, no talks about periods. Even in anatomy classes that I had, me and my classmates alike were all in the dark about learning about periods or sex ed in general. And because of this, we would search online to try to teach ourselves about sex ed and period health when we could. But the information that we found was maybe not true or misleading. The little information that we did get in school was also false and painted periods in a negative light when they did come up.
I think both men and female have to be educated at a very young age. I was taught, okay, in 6th grade, they were teaching us about periods, and my dad didn't want me to know, so he opted me out. Cultural stuff, I don't understand. I can't tell you why.
I've missed school, work, or even social events because my cramps or periods were so bad. Having a period while in school and feeling shameful for not being educated and being trans while menstruating was so hard for me.
I remember 6th grade. I feel like that's a bit too late. Yes, typically in middle school is the time range where you get your period, but there are some times where you get it at an earlier age. So I think it should be taught at a very young age, 4th grade or something like that.
Schools today should either have gender-neutral restrooms or place trash cans and period products in every restroom to normalize having a period for all genders. If I could change one thing about having a period in school, it would be to have these safe and accessible restrooms. No one should fear harassment or embarrassment when they're just menstruating.
And it's not a scary experience, and I don't think anyone should be, ashamed, I guess. It's just a normal thing your body does.